The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Look, it's like my giant head is floating in outer space. How about that? It's Thursday night, May 9th, 2024. It's 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Sydney, Australia, and here in Northeast Minneapolis, Minnesota, it's 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I am Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 117, if you're keeping score at home. How you doing, everybody? Yeah, okay. I'm doing all right. I got some stuff to tell you about in a couple minutes. But first of all, I got to tell you this. So we were running our UFO panel tonight. It's Jazz Shaw and John Greenwald from the Black Vault. Micah Hanks from the Debrief couldn't make it at the last minute. We taped this afternoon, and that's actually one of the reasons I'm bringing this up here. You'll notice we don't have our normal banner on the top of the bottom of the screen because we're not taking calls tonight. Basically, because this is a pre-recorded group interview, and you can't get the calls in, and it's also quite long, so it's doing most of the show. But on top of all that, and I don't find this out until about 15 minutes before we start, Blog Talk Radio is down yet again, so our telephone number isn't even working. So if you try to call us, nothing happens. So I mean, I guess that's kind of good. I don't know. We are taking text tonight. If you want to text us something, go ahead. That's the number down there. It's 408-458-5088. And I don't want to, because this is a pre-recorded interview, we're not taking video phone calls either. We're not doing that. So we get, usually we got it going on, but now we got it going on too much. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so I got to tell you this too. So here's the deal. I'm having on June 3rd, which is a Monday, I'm having hip replacement surgery. Yeah, the hip is going out. And matter of fact, it's gone out pretty quickly. And I'm in a lot of pain. I'll tell you right now. Now I'm having a very hard time even walking. And this happened all very quickly. I was really quite surprised, shocked how quickly this happened. But the people at Twin Cities Orthopedics, they got me in, and so I'm having surgery. So here's the deal on this, folks, and that is for the next 3 weeks, we're only going to do 3 shows a week. Now, but the thing is, I don't know right now I don't know offhand which 3 nights they're going to be. So, normally we're on Monday through Thursday, and if you're tuning in regularly, yeah, we've been missing a few days here and there the last 4 or 5 weeks or so for all sorts of various reasons. And instead of, I want to do is I want to try to avoid doing 3 shows in a row because uh, I wouldn't want to tell you this except that it has to do with the show. I'm in I'm in so much pain that it's basically become exhausting, even just dealing with it. So I don't want to do 3 nights in a row. It just takes too much out of me. So we're probably going to miss on the next 3 weeks a Tuesday or a Wednesday every week. Now the week after that, that's the surgery week. I'm taking that whole week off. So, but I should when I come back on the 10th of June, I should be just fine. They're telling me, it should be great, no problem. So yeah, so now for example, next week, we're either going to have Tim Conaway on Monday or Tuesday. He's scheduled for Tuesday, but I've asked him this afternoon whether he could switch it to Monday. I haven't heard from him. It's up to him. Whatever due day he can make it, we're going to do a show. So that I will take whatever other day is available off. And then on Wednesday we have the dynamic duo. They're coming on. That's Jeff Meyer and Jennifer Oliver O'Connell from redstate.com. And Thursday we'll probably book a guest. Can't tell you right now who, but we'll probably have we'll still have full guests pretty much all the entire time. But I'm taking one day. We're for the next 3 weeks. We're only doing 3 shows a week. That's my point. Okay, so now tonight, like I said, we got the UFO panel. They're fabulous. If you're in the UFO stuff, and we've been pushing this, so I'm kind of glad. I hope you are. It's like you can't get two better guys than this. I mean, they're like basically major experts. John Greenwald, you've seen him on every damn UFO documentary and TV show on the planet. He's on all of them, so, and for good reason. He started the Black Vault, and I think he said today he's been running it like 25, 27 years. That he has collected single-handedly too. That's actually very important here. He's collected 3.4 million documents via the Freedom of Information Act from the U.S. government. And he tells a story at the beginning of the interview here. You'll hear it about the fact that well, first of all, there's basically an art to getting this information. You have to know exactly precisely how to phrase these letters and exactly what to put in them, because the people who fill these requests out do it by the letter. They don't do any more or any less than they're asked for, because that's kind of their job. And he said, and as a general rule, they won't help you out. If you got to know what you want, and then they fulfill your request. And so he said that a guy he knew who worked there at the office to process the freedom of the FOIA request, he said quit, resigned, and actually after he resigned, he contacted him via email and said, "Look, you probably know surprise to you that people here in this office think you're a pain in the ass," but he said, "Don't quit." He said, because the thing is, this office is set up for a reason to help the public, and just because we're lazy doesn't mean you should you should quit. And yeah, it's another government bureaucracy, and we talked a little bit about that too. So you want to stay tuned, and we're gonna put this on in a few minutes here. So yeah, Monday we got Tim Conaway, or Monday or Tuesday, and unfortunately, usually on a Thursday, because this is the last show of our week. I like to tell you which nights we're gonna do next. I actually don't know. I right now I do not know. We're gonna be on. I mean, I'll post a thing in this weekend on the blog as soon as I find out at jimandnight.com. But we don't. It's either gonna be Monday or Tuesday. But I know that the dynamic duo, they're on Wednesday for sure. So, and we will have a guest on Thursday. So there's that. So right now, like I said, you can't call in tonight. We don't have the telephone number isn't working, and we're not going to take the video phone calls because we pre-recorded this interview. So we can't deal with it. And frankly, I don't usually. I do a part 3. After I'm actually thinking about even putting a section on the website called part 3 of all the bunch of weird stuff I run into. It's like, because it's all kind of entertaining, but the the group interview we do, the group chat here, is so much part 3. It's basically a giant part 3. It's part 3. So yeah. So yeah, I think I covered everything. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I feel fine if I'm sitting down. That's the thing. And of course I'm sitting to do this, so yeah, I'm okay when I'm sitting. I can't any movement at all, and I just kind of sets me off. Yeah, yeah, like you don't want to hear a 68-year-old man bitch and moan on the internet TV. I'm sure you do, but it's a pain in the ass. Okay, so our sponsor is Conk News, and you know that. This is the front page of Conk News in real time tonight. As a matter of fact, this flipped over while we were once again. I don't know what the timing of the servers are over there, but every 3 hours this whole thing changes. And it actually flipped over while we were waiting to come on. I know that. So I don't actually know what these articles are. The one on the top left was there before, but a comedian. Anyway, Conk News is aggregates news stories from 75 different news sources on the internet. And every 3 hours, your servers go out, collect the news, bring it back, lay it out on the front page in chronological order, regardless of the source. Yeah, so the newest stories are always at the top, and presents it to you, the viewer, for free, and you don't have to register. or log in or do anything. This is just the front page of the conk.com website. It's conk.com, and it's yours for the taking, and God knows you should take it, because it's the closest thing to a legitimate, real newspaper I think that's ever been produced online. I mean, if you were a Drudge fan, I think Drudge is the viewership of Drudge has really gone down the last few years. But if you were a Drudge fan at some time, this is just as good, if not better. Because I mean, first of all, Jeff Meyer and his crew, they don't rewrite the headlines. If you were a Drudge fan, the Drudge rewrote the headlines to all the stories when you click through. They don't do that. The headlines here, the headlines are the actual articles. The pictures, the photos are from the articles themselves. So when you click through to see a story, you don't go to the front page of that website. You don't go to an ad, none of that crap. You go right to the story. So it is the closest thing online to a newspaper experience you can get. Like I said, they flip this over every 3 hours. So you go here at 10 AM, you can spend 2 to 3 hours reading the news. This front page is very long. It's very long. You can read and you'll notice, my picture's on the right-hand side there. That's because they started putting that up because it's response to the show, and I appreciate that. That's very nice. They just started doing that a few days ago. You can spend 2-3 hours looking at the articles on the front page, and you can come back at 2-3 o'clock, 4, 5, 6 hours later, and 80% of it is different. And the stuff that isn't different, that's from before, is all pushed to the bottom. So if you're a news junkie, you can't do any better than this. You should check it out. It's conk.com, conk.com. God bless them, really, seriously. All right, so what happened today? I'll tell you what happened. We got a couple really important things that happened today. First of all, and I don't know what order to do this, so I'm just going to yak here. Joe Biden went on CNN and talked to Aaron Burnett last night or the night before. I can't remember. I don't watch CNN as a general rule. I see the clips. It's bullshit. Where did anybody at CNN? Where did the producers get the idea that they should have these panel discussions with 9 people? I mean, God Almighty, that's stupid. I mean, do you have to? I mean, I would like to think if you're at that level of television production, you understand some basics about presentation. I mean, like, for example, here's a counter. Fox News, excellent product. Even if you don't agree with the political opinions, even just as a broadcasting product, absolutely first rate. They don't have a single show that has more than 5 people on at any one time. Remember, they only have like a couple that have 5. Usually it's 4 or less, right? And I've done enough to know this too. Once you have more than 5 people on the screen, the whole thing breaks down. This show, we like to keep it to 4. We don't normally don't have more than four people on, because we're not in the same room. We're doing this virtually. So, but you go to CNN and there's Anderson Cooper, bless his heart. I mean, he's going to die in that chair. And he's talking to 10 people. What the hell? That is just the stupidest thing ever. And you can't relate. First of all, you don't hear any of the people enough to be able to relate to them unless you come back. And who's going to do that? And nobody is. Although I got to say something. I've been bashing them for like 3 years. Their ratings I'm not exaggerating about this. Their ratings have been went down 30 months in a row. But this last month, April, they clicked back up for the first time in like 3 years. The ratings actually went up a little bit. So okay, fine. That's good. It went up from what, 0 to 1.0 or something. I don't know. But anyway, Aaron Burnett interviews the president. It could not have gone worse. That's all I'll tell you. And I know this because even the left-wing media thinks it went terribly. Even they think so. I mean, no one has anything good to say about this. First of all, and this is the reason, and this is a big deal with me. This is a primary reason I'm paying attention to this. The stuff the president said about the economy under his watch, it could not be the biggest bunch of lies you've ever. And the thing is, they're blatant, and you don't even have to be like an expert to check them out. For example, the president said that when he came into office, inflation was at 9%. That's not true at all. It was at 1.7%. At no point during the Trump presidency did inflation go above 3% at no point. And it was usually below 2, and that's where you want it. 2% or less is yeah, I mean, this is getting in the weeds here a little bit, but if you're into economics, the thing is you want a little bit of inflation because that means that basically you're kind of pushing money. That's what basically that means. So and a little bit of inflation is basically defined as 2% or less. That's the that's actually healthy. And for most of, like I said, for the entirety of Trump's tenure, it was under 3%, and for most of the time was under 2%. So when Joe came into office, it was at 1.7%. A year later, it was 9.1. Now it's about 3.5% now. I mean, it's come down, but it's still too high. And he says no. And then the other thing he said, well, it doesn't matter how high inflation is because people have more money. That's not true too. Matter of fact, it's the opposite. Credit card debt in the United States has exploded. People have less money. I mean, the guys he's insulting to the I do the shopping in my family, and actually, talking about my hip. That I went shopping yesterday, and my God in heaven, I don't believe it. I barely lived through it. But anyway, I do the shopping in my family. I know how much stuff costs. I do the shopping because my wife hates it, and I kind of like it. First of all, it gets me out. I get to walk around. I like to see what people are selling, and I know pretty much the cost of everything. So, I mean, and then I was talking to somebody the other day. I don't know about what your experience is, but where I live here in the Midwest in Minneapolis, in the last 18 months, since maybe the January of 23, the perception is, I know, of course, I know this isn't true, but I'm making a generalization. The perception is that everything in the grocery store has gone up 50% in the last 18 months. That's my perception. Now I know that's not actually true, but I know some items have, and matter of fact, some items have gone up higher than that. I know. So what is the president talking about? Well, he doesn't know. First of all, he's a career politician. He's been grifting off the public for 50 years. He owns 3 houses. One of them is a mansion. Nobody really knows where he got the money. Can you say Ukraine? Can you say that? Or, can you say China? his his sleazebag of a son. This guy's never accomplished anything. He's never done anything with his life at all, and he's telling people, well, you have more money now. No, no, we don't. It's the opposite. We have less money. You stupid jackass. I'm really starting to really hate this guy. I mean, I did not, and I've always bitched and moaned about how liberals have the, Trump derangement syndrome. Most of the liberal friends I know, most of them, they hate Trump's guts, but they can't tell you why. I can tell you exactly why I hate Joe Biden's guts, and I didn't come into this doing this. You know, Trump lost. Blah de da. Maybe he'll do. I'm thinking maybe he'll do a good job. Well, no, he didn't. So, oh, yeah, here's another thing too. And I can't remember who is this. Well, let me check. This is Stanley Druckenmiller. He's a famous economist and investor. He said that if he had to grade the Biden economy, he would give it an F. That's what he said. And then a guy you've probably heard of, Kevin Hassett, who's the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, he said, and this is really interesting. He says that if Trump goes to jail on any of these charges or these bogus charges they're trying to apply him on, he thinks the market will crash. That's what he thinks. And well, first of all, I don't have to tell you this. I mean, it looks like this whole scheme of Biden's, and it was Biden's. Don't kid yourself. I mean, Biden. This is all under the direction of the president to attempt, or at least attempt to put Trump in jail, or at the very least chew up a bunch of his time. It looks like it's completely backfired because Trump's numbers keep going up. I mean, right now, if the things keep going the way they're going to, it's the election is going to be a landslide. Now, a lot can happen in 6 months, of course, you know. And also, well, there was a poll finally, I think it was Rasmussen, finally took a poll on this a few days ago and said that they asked people, they said, if Trump actually goes to jail, would you not vote for him? Well, it turns out that, and I've always said it would be about a wash, but actually, a few more people would actually vote for him if he was in jail than not. So you'd have people who would say who weren't going to vote for him who would, and people who were going to vote for him and then wouldn't. Which it's kind of weird, but yeah, okay, that's what the polling data said. So I mean, I've always said it'd pretty much be a wash. I don't think there'd be any real change at all. So it's really interesting. But yeah, they asked people that question finally, and that was the answer. And so I mean, this is not this is not going well for the Democrats at all. And I don't people saying, well, Trump plays 40 chess, and I don't know if that's true, but sometimes I wonder. I mean, if you look back on the predictions he's made in the last 4 years, I mean, Jesus Christ, almost every single one of them came out to be true. It's really, it's uncanny. It's uncanny almost, And I'm sure there's a bunch of Democrats somewhere who would say, "Oh no, no, that's not true." That's no, no, it is. It is. You check it out. I mean, I haven't gone down an actual list, but I've tried to keep track of the stuff in my head. That's kind of my job here. It's astonishing how much of the shit he predicted actually came true. I so we this is anyway. Joe Biden is talking to Aaron Burnett, and it did not go well. And then you wonder, well, how somebody said today, well, Biden has to debate Trump now because he's locked into it. He said he would. No, 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 he doesn't. I doubt very much that's going to happen. There's going to be no debate. And then the other thing that happened today, which made a lot of people very, very angry, including members of Congress, is that Biden has said that if Israel goes into Rafah regarding in the Israel in their war with Hamas, if they don't, we will withhold military funds and equipment we've already put aside to send them. We would withhold them because Biden says, well, uh, civilians are going to get killed. Well, yeah, it's war. That's what happens. And if Hamas didn't want a war, they shouldn't have started one. Now, and then you get the people say, well, the colonizers. Yeah, well, there's another thing about that too. That was 75 years ago. Israel moved into that territory 75 years ago. It's done. It's over. At some point, there's a natural statute of limitations in life, which is a reason that exists in the law. At some point, you can't go back. And I don't know where that point is exactly, but we're way past it. You are not going to dismantle Tel Aviv. You're just not going to do. And people say, well, the Palestinians, they deserve a right to build a homeland. Well, they've had the Gaza Strip for 14 years and they've done nothing with it. Nothing. Meanwhile, Tel Aviv, after about 50 years, is one of the most vibrant and one of the most prosperous cities in the world. And then the really thing, and I have to um, repeat this because it really, really bears. There's nothing funnier than queers for Palestine. You want to be queer in Palestine? You go right ahead. You go over there. Somebody suggested now that all these protesters on college campuses that we should send them to Gaza for 6 months. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. And meanwhile, in Tel Aviv is one of the most liberal and freest cities for gay and lesbian people in the entire world. It might be even freer than any city in America. I mean, they're extremely liberal there, and you can, people, it's one of the great party towns on earth. I mean, God, everything runs 24 hours, and that's the irony. There's no better place on the planet to be gay than Tel Aviv, and you're talking about like, oh yeah, right. Let's shut it down. Oh yeah, good. Meanwhile, you go over to the Gaza Strip and they'll throw you off the building for being gay. It's just if there's nothing more ironic than this. And what is with these stupid kids? Jesus Christ! And I've I'm 68. We were stupid. We were really stupid, but nowhere near as stupid as these children. It's like, oh my god, unbelievable. And also, this bears repeating, and it was one of the reasons I asked Tim Conaway to come on here next week. I'm sure him and I will talk about this. He had the exact same attitude I did, and that is the protests of 1967 and 1968 on college campuses are completely different than what's going on now. Because first of all, it was our war. So in other words, we were setting the policy for ourselves. We were controlling what we were doing. Secondly, because it was our war, it was our kids fighting in it in our military, and all these college kids were literally losing friends to the war. 55,000 Americans died in the Vietnam War. 55,000. And those aren't civilians; those are actually all military people. So the kids of the 1960s, they lost a lot of friends, and they're pissed off. And on top of that, history has pretty much come to conclude that their point of view is correct. We fought a pointless war. We basically 55,000 people lost their lives for nothing, and that's terrible. And I know Vietnam vets that don't want to hear that. I know because it's too painful. But I mean, unfortunately, because of this discussion, it has to be brought up. It's awful. We abandoned South Vietnam, and 3 weeks later, or something like that, it fell, and North Vietnam won. So there's no equivalency here at all. The kids at Columbia this week, they're protesting a war where we have absolutely no direct say in policy or what happens. They have no influence on what's happening at all, other than the fact that Hamas thanked them, that's really nice. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Oh yeah, that makes us feel good on campus. The terrorist organization said, "Thanks so much. Keep it up." What the hell? So anyway, today Biden said he's not going to. If they enter Rafah, it looks like they're going to. He said we're not going to send them anymore. Um, the aid that's and the military equipment that's been promised. Now, first of all, you have to remember, and people kind of forgot about this. They impeached Donald Trump for exactly the same thing because they said he was withholding military aid to Ukraine, and that actually turned out not to be true. He wasn't. It was a fluke of the timing that it appeared that way on the surface, but that's not what actually happened. So they got that wrong right away. They impeached him for that, and now Biden's done the exact same thing during an actual wartime scenario. And so the Republicans have decided they're going to start impeachment proceedings against Biden, of course, and it might be just a waste of time. I mean, they're not going to actually convict the guy. They're not. You know, the Democrats would never go along with it in a million years. You need in the Senate, you need 2/3 of a vote. The House can do it on a one vote majority to start the process, but to actually finish it for the conviction, the Senate needs 2/3 of the Senate, and that's not going to happen. But there's a lot of people who said today that this is the single most callous thing in foreign policy a president has done in American history ever. Because I mean, Israel's fighting for its life, and so and not to give them the military aid they need when they actually need it. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Especially because when we promised it to them. And this is, Ed Morrissey's coming on the show in 2 weeks. He's the managing editor of HotAir.com, where Jazz Shaw works. And the last time he was on the show, it happened to be the first time he was on the show. He made a very, very eloquent uh, discourse at the end of his interview about why we should send money to Ukraine. And the reason I don't talk about this on the show is I literally don't know what to think. I don't when I don't have strong opinions about something, I just basically kind of avoid it because I don't know what to. I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say. Although I'm good, I like to ask guests about stuff like that, and he illuminated me, like a light bulb. But what he said is that, and this is, I kind of forgot about this, and you probably forgot about it too. We years ago we promised Ukraine that we would help them if something like this happened, in exchange for them not developing nuclear weapons. That was we made them a promise that if you stop your nuclear program, we will defend you if something happens. And they did stop their nuclear program, and so yeah, we are kind of bound, bound by a promise to help them, and you have to kind of keep those things, you know. I mean, otherwise you look like a doofus in a shithole. So that's what happened today. So Biden's was going to not send the aid to Rafah, or for the exercise in Rafah. Trump got impeached for the same thing. He doesn't care. He's going to go about and doing it. Excuse me, pardon me. People are pissed off. There's your news today in a nutshell. Oh, and of course, Stormy Daniels um, talked. She was on the witness stand for the Trump trial, which is, of course, and that is the first of all. There's no reason she should be there. There's nothing in the case that actually. I mean, the case doesn't really revolve around the fact that he had sex with her, all that salacious crap, whether he did or not. He says he didn't. He said she did. She said, but I mean, nothing legally is being accomplished, and everyone has pointed that out. The only reason she's there is to embarrass Trump. Trump, that's it. Although apparently the defense has done a really good job shutting her down, supposedly. I'm not there. I don't know, but so yeah, they put a porn star on the stand to talk about the president, and the judge even warned the prosecution that don't get too salacious with the details anyway. But they did, and she did, and he ignored it. So whatever. All right, folks, we're gonna play our group discussion now. Uh, if you're a UFO fan, you'll like this, you'll love it, and if you're not, I hope you'll like it anyway. So we'll come back after this. So this is Jazz Shaw, John Greenwald, and me talking about the UFO crap. Here we go. All right, joining us for this panel here on UFO Night, it's Jazz Shaw, Salem media writer for HotAir.com, and the weekend editor, right, Jazz? Right?
Yeah, and a few other places.
Yeah, and for the debrief. And we should mention Mika Hanks was going to join us today. He couldn't at the last minute. And he's
Micah had 3 people out at the same time. He was planning on being here, and then he just got hammered.
Yeah, so. and then on the right side of your screen is John Greenwald of the blackvault.com. And John, let me ask you: do you use the junior in your name? I haven't been able to figure that out.
Yes and no. Yeah, I was never officially a junior, but to differentiate from my dad, who worked as a government contractor with Rocketdyne and NASA, I always tried to differentiate because he was a little worried about his son digging into a bunch of government secrets, so I adopted it. But it's not legal and not a big deal.
You should bring that up because that's actually one of the first things I wanted to ask you guys about. So I'm looking on the Black Vault website, John, and it says that you have about 3.4 million documents in there. How long did it take you to acquire them? Is that over what, 30 years?
About 27. I started in 96.
Okay, so this is the first thing I want to talk to you guys about, and you just brought it up, John, about the government, the ridiculousness of the government bureaucracy. I'm reading through some of the documents on your website, John, and I mean the gobbledygook, the legal gobbledygook in these government. I mean, it's enough to make you want to shoot yourself. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And you do this for a living. And Jazz, I know you talk to a lot of people in government. It's like the layers of bureaucracy are freaking ridiculous. And first of all, are they hiding stuff by using these layers of democracy? I mean, that's probably a rhetorical question, but anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in and say absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you pick a topic. There are layers of secrecy that sometimes is just impenetrable. So yeah, they use it to their advantage to hide things, cover up things, give the aura of transparency. But when you look at the actual evidence, another story emerges.
Oh yeah, I've been lied to on numerous occasions, or at least had very misleading information given to me by people in the government. I will tell you, and once again, make sure you get the URL on the odd chance that there's somebody out there in your audience that's not familiar with John's work. If you've never been to the Black Vault, you have to go there. Uh, I knew about John long before he'd ever heard of me, and I was actually a little bit starstruck, honestly, the first time I actually got in touch with him on social media, and then, did an interview and had a chance to talk to him and stuff, because I'd been following him for so long. He has so much stuff, and over the years, I tried to file FOIA requests, not about UFOs or anything, but just regular government and military stuff that we write about, and I was terrible at it. And it was only after I finally got to meet John and start talking to him, and he explained some things, like I was doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
So there's an art to it. I'm nowhere near as much of an expert as him, if you go watch John's videos, he gives so many hints and tips and almost like classes on how to properly use FOIA, and you can get a lot more out of them if you do it correctly. I was doing things like sending requests to the wrong agencies, or using the wrong names for things. And most of the people, not all, there's a few good ones I've run into that are very helpful, but most of them, if you submit something and you don't do it right, they don't come back and go, well, what is it you're trying to figure out? They just come back and go, no results found. And
Right.
that's all you hear from them.
Yeah.
That was 90% of the responses I got,
Yeah.
mostly because I was screwing up. The last few years since, following John's work, I've had a lot better results.
So funny you should mention that, Jazz, because John, I was watching on your website, or actually on YouTube, the latest thing you posted about this thing about David Grush possibly lying or whatever it was. First of all, it's an hour and 43 minutes long. Okay, fine. And the first, but you spend a good 15 minutes at the beginning, basically trying to explain to the audience how you have to formulate these FOIA requests.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating because, I mean, I guess I knew this was true, but still, the fact that you just laid it out about the fact that if you left out like one single half of a sentence, the whole thing completely changes. It's
Yeah.
just ridiculous.
It is, and I know that sometimes when I do the deep dives, they're long, and it's a double-edged sword. If you condense it, you leave out so much that I
Yeah.
think the audience needs
Right.
to hear on those deep dives. But the other thing too is I have a lot of people in the audience that do like to use FOIA or are afraid to use it, and I always try and encourage people to do it. And it means the world to me to hear someone like Jazz, say what he did, and that the videos help, these tips help. Because that's my aim and goal. And, he says FOIA expert. I'm a big advocate for the fact that there are no FOIA experts. I've done this for 27 years and I learn stuff all the time. And
John,
and going back to your bureaucracy question, that's where the learning comes in, because you could really feel like you master FOIA, but you actually have to adhere what you know about FOIA and play the games that the government loves to play, whether they be the word games. If you word something wrong, there's so many different hoops to have to jump through. So it's not necessarily always learning FOIA, but rather how you take your FOIA knowledge and play the game. But yeah, those deep dives, they do get long, but you have to, and stuff like this, you have to really dissect how these things came out. What do you ask for? Why do things happen? Because to kind of close that thought, after I posted those documents, the conspiracy theories just raged throughout this conversation, primarily surrounding the release of the signal text messages between Christopher Mellon and Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
And, when I say conspiracy theories, I mean it. I mean, people say that I work for the government. People say, which I do not, for your audience that doesn't know, people say that I work with them to essentially coordinate these responses. And why I lay out that meticulous and albeit sometimes boring aspects of the FOIA is to show the audience, look, this isn't a conspiracy where the Pentagon is feeding me stuff, but on the opposite, I have to fight, and you have to fight, and you have to fight. You have to appeal and appeal and appeal, and you have to play that game, and it's not easy sometimes. And a lot of times the government puts a wall between you and getting this information. So when I see those conspiracy theories, on one hand, it's really frustrating. On the other hand, you look at it and you can't help but laugh, because it's like, oh my God, if you only knew how many follow-ups and an appeal or whatever the circumstance required, if you knew how many hoops you had to go through, sometimes I wish that they worked with me and just said, all right, John, here you go, because then I'd be able to get the documents without a 5-10 year wait,
Well,
So
hey, John, you've been doing this.
Hang on,
Yeah,
if anybody watches this show and is checking around, again, if you happen to somehow not be familiar with John and you hear or think that he's working with the government, you need to go read a lot of the responses that he gets from the government on some of these FOIA requests. Most of them are perfunctory, business, things like that. But there's more than a few that I've run across where it just comes through. We're wishing they could say something. And there's notes on the side. This is one of our frequent requesters. It's like they're so sick of this guy.
But Jazz, that's exactly what I was going to ask John. Is that after all these years from doing this, do you have anybody in the government that just kind of helps you at all?
Well, I will say this, joking aside, because I know in many offices I'm not liked. I know that for a fact. I'm a heavy requester. I exercise my right to use FOIA quite a bit, and that upsets a lot of people. And I've been told that by people that have resigned. One guy from the Pentagon years and years ago, I was young. I was still a teenager when I got this. And to quickly summarize the story, he had wrote me, told me who he was. Of course, posting everything on the internet, you never know who anybody is. But he told me what requests I had in the Pentagon that no one else knew except myself.
Right.
So it clearly was the right person. But essentially, he said, one of the reasons he retired was the laziness of people in these offices that don't want to help requesters, that are just simply exercising their right. And I remembered, and this is a verbatim quote, he says, "Keep at it, kid." And I remembered that, and it was essentially like, not help, because I know what you're asking, but rather it was quite the opposite, that a lot of people don't want to help. They want you to just go away. Now, in fairness, there are some offices that really are helpful, and they very much want to help you navigate the legal waters. So it's not help where they're giving you tips and saying, hey, why don't you request this because you're going to get something good.
Right.
It's not about that, but more so, just trying to get you what you want, because customer service lacks quite a bit in these FOIA offices. But thankfully there are offices that want to help. So in that regard, yes, but not in the way that I think
also,
you were asking.
it sounds like we're talking about, when you're talking about like help, you're talking about like lack of opposition. You're not necessarily looking for anybody to actually. And when you were talking about this guy, I thought you were going to say he quit because of people like you. But so that was really led. He didn't say that. But, can I get on my high horse about the government here just a second? And Jazz and I do this all the time. So if you're working in one of these offices and your job is to fulfill FOIA requests, well, fuck you. Do your fucking job. I mean, I don't know. It's like, that's my 2 bits, John. Anyway,
John is a big advocate for people using FOIA. More recently, just in the last 6 months or so, I would say, I have become an advocate in the background. I probably should do it more publicly, of working to make sure that the government fixes FOIA. And I have contacted members of Congress that are in the so-called UAP caucus, that are advocating for transparency. And I've been trying to encourage other people to contact them and say, I know you're trying to get to the truth. You're trying to get all these answers. It's a big investigation. But at the same time, you have the power to address this situation. You control the budget. We need the budget, the training, and a different mentality. You need more people answering FOIA requests. John, what's the longest FOIA response you ever got? You just talked about it recently.
14 and a half years.
14 and a half years.
Yeah. Not an
That's
exaggeration.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
I don't think everybody should have an answer in 3 business days.
Yeah,
but I've waited for 2 years on some of them, and I have requested maybe 1/10 or 1/100th of 1% of the number of requests that John's filed. And I've waited a couple of years and then got basically nothing. But I think Congress could do more, and it's something they could do without demanding, well, show us all the secrets or endanger national security. No, just fix your budget, hire more people, get better training for your people, make sure they are better, to use that phrase, better customer service people. You know, don't betray your nation, but they need more people doing it and doing it effectively and efficiently and working, because that's the law. It's not optional. It's a
Right.
law.
Right.
They're supposed to do this.
Now, I
You
get a
know?
segue here really quick. Also, just before we go on, I want to point out, John, I wasn't trying to criticize you for having those long videos. It was the opposite. I admire the fact that you know, because you're the problem is people want to make everything simple. Not everything's simple, you know.
Right.
And if you're going to explain it, it takes time. So I wasn't actually. I maybe came off like a criticism, but it actually wasn't. I didn't
take it that way, Jim.
Well,
but I
whatever.
appreciate it.
At any rate,
and it would be okay if you did, because I know that they can get sometimes long. And I kind of always preface the video with, hey, I know these aren't for everybody, meaning the deep dive videos, because they aren't. I mean, they're, you know, they get detailed. So sometimes I'll do videos that are, you know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes or whatever. But other times it's deserving. But I didn't take it as criticism, but I really appreciate you saying that.
That's okay. I mean, I'm in a different business, but I got a problem here, if you want to call it a problem. I'm trying to keep all of my interviews to basically roughly an hour. You know, now I just, you know, and Joe Rogan does 3 hour interviews, and I know they're fascinating, but I'm not going to spend 3 hours watching anything, not even porn. I'm not going to spend 3 hours doing that.
I never watch entire Rogan interviews. I will confess, maybe I'm kind of a fanboy. I watch all of John's interviews, beginning to end. But I will say, for the people, and I know there are people who don't have 90 minutes, you know, to go through something that long. But if you go to the website, blackvault.com, every time he puts one up, he also puts up a brief article that goes with it, where you're going to get a summary, you're going to get bullet points. And if all you want is just the highlights, you can at least look at that, and you'll know there's a story there. And if you want to dig deeper, you can dig deeper. So
yeah. So you brought up something where you're just talking just a second ago, Jazz, about oh Jesus, now I'm gonna forget. It's terrible. All right, let's go on. Let's talk about David Grush, since we started on by David Grush. What's the deal with Grush? Is this guy legit or not? I mean, I listen to him, and based on the cues I hear, it seems to me he is, but you guys are way more knowledgeable than I am.
I'll let John go first.
Oh, hot seat. Look, I will say
that's a grenade right there.
Yeah, seriously.
I didn't even know that. So I mean,
well,
I did watch most of the video where you were explaining this, but still, it's like, you know,
it's a tough question to answer, and it's simply because of this. I believe, and I've said this before, that I believe David Grush is genuine when he's conveying the material that he is. And I believe, though, that there's a huge possibility that what he has heard is from a group of people that may not have the evidence that they boast about. And I believe that this has happened before with other people as well. But David Grush has a very genuine quality about him, in my opinion. I don't believe that he's there maliciously lying. So I think that I have to say that to start. But as more information comes out, I have bigger questions. And that is the testimony that he gave that says Arrow never tried to contact me. And then when Sean Kirkpatrick said what he did last year on Halloween, I believe it was, of last year, David Grush fired back and said, oh, that's a lie. And he gave that to News Nation. Well, those types of things are fascinating to me, because that's where FOIA shines. All of this would be in official records, and that's what I did. I went after proof, or the lack thereof, to see which gentleman was lying.
John,
and
did you get the signal messages from FOIA too?
I did.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I didn't even know that would be covered. Okay.
Yeah, and there's you know, I don't know how much detail you want to go on that, but yeah, that was what people had reacted to the most, was because when I did get this FOIA release, there were not only the signal messages, but emails. There were internal emails within the Department of Defense. Then eventually you get to communications between David Grush and essentially Arrow. We don't know what member of Arrow. We know it wasn't Dr. Kirkpatrick, just by the wording of it. Mm-hmm. But it was redacted names in that paper. But you get all these communications, and essentially the bottom line, right, to go back to your question, is I believe there's that genuine quality about him, but then you see the evidence and you go, well, wait a minute. You're saying Arrow's lying. Dr. Kirkpatrick's lying that they never reached out to you, no emails. And yet through FOIA, there was this long string of pieces of evidence that they were trying to get to him. They wanted to speak with him. They wanted to invite him in. And then more of the picture emerged about Grush saying they're not cleared, but then you see the evidence that they likely were cleared. And so it's again, these questions that come along when more evidence comes out. And that's what's really, I think it kind of links.
We can do this.
Wow. I think
Yeah,
we
everybody
just
dropped out, including me. So that's all right.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, you were, you know. Let me just paraphrase what you just said. So my impression is you got the impression that David Grush is not specifically lying, but you think he's being fed misinformation. Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, I think that that's a huge possibility. I mean, if he comes out to the contrary with firsthand knowledge of something, great. I mean, I'm interested in it. But I think that he's taking information that he got from 40 different people. We also don't know, and nobody really talks about this. We know that he talked to 40 different people. That's great. We know that he has some grandiose claims about biologics, non-human biologics, crash wreckage, and so on. How many of the 40 people told him that? 1, 2, 40? We don't know. My whole point being is that how many people really are backing up those pieces of information that he's conveying to the public? Again, we don't know. He could have talked to 40 people, 38 of which, sure, gave him some supporting UAP information, but did they all support firsthand knowledge of biologics? So again, there's a lot of unanswered questions there, but these documents show that what he had said to News Nation, what he's told the general public, is not necessarily accurate. So am I ready to say, oh, David Grush is lying? No, that's not how I operate. But when these types of documents come out, I'd love to see him counter that, because there's all those conspiracy theories that go beyond me working for the government. There are other people that think that these were made up, that these emails and everything were actually hoaxed.
Right.
Now, anybody can verify them. So if you want to go down the hoax route, then the DOD and the Pentagon hoaxed these. And that's what people are saying. And it's not just 1 or 2 people. There are quite a bit of people that think that this is all, just a big hoax. So it's like, you can't just go down the conspiracy route. At some point, David Grush has to address this. But the bottom line, too, is if his argument is that Arrow was not cleared, then I believe a legal argument to the general public should be made on why that is true. And I think that's just not me demanding that because I want to know. I think the public has a right to know. And if he wants to preach transparency, he wants to be a whistleblower, he wants to come out and tell the public as much as he can, at the very least, explain why you're not going to Arrow with the legal foundation that I think the public deserves. And to date, we don't have that.
Okay. I'm glad John jumped on that grenade first, but I did want to add a couple of things in. First of all, before I saw John's revelations, the stuff that he found with the signal messages and all that, up until that point, I was kind of on the same page as him. But I will start out by saying, whether you're talking about Grush, whether you're talking about Kirkpatrick, any of the other people that are involved, the people at the Pentagon, these are all people involved in the government and the military. And for all I know, they're all liars. But then again, I'm a jaded kind of person.
No, but I got to tell you, that's where I was going too, so it's fine.
But with that said, I had come down for quite a while on the side that I sincerely believed in. I didn't know about David Grush until he came forward, but a lot of the other people who vouched for him, I have dealt with and I knew about. And I believe he is who he says he is, that he did what he said he did in terms of service for the government, working in the intelligence community. This is all true, and that he was involved. Well, he can show that he was involved with Arrow in 2 different phases, as a correspondent for the places where he was working at the time. So, yeah, there's that. But at the same time, except for some kind of vague things that have come up more recently, everything he said was secondhand knowledge. It was like, I was told this. Yeah. John already said, I investigated. I talked to all these people. This is the information I collected. And I've taken it to the Inspector General. And I was like, great. but you didn't see the craft. You
Right.
didn't touch the bodies.
Right.
And so it's still secondhand information. Even if, and I'll go one step further, and I know people hate it when I say this, even if we have 40 new whistleblowers, which we supposedly do, and some of them come forward and they say, no, I was one of the people that talked to him. I was on the program. I've seen the bodies. I've seen the craft. I've touched them. You know, okay, so now that's firsthand information. So I guess that's better. But if we're going to have actual disclosure, and if this is real, and I'm no longer anywhere near 100% sure that it is, I think the public eventually wants somebody to, and it's an old saying, corny as it may be, show us them aliens. They need
Yeah.
to come wheel one out.
Right.
And when the whole public gets to see it, then everybody can, well, it's never going to be everybody, but most people would be like, oh, wow, that is weird. Wow, okay, that's real. And then a lot of people will be able to just move on. But we're not even close to there yet. I don't know if we're going to get there in my lifetime. I would love it if we did. I've seen craft. You and I have discussed that.
Yeah. I have too.
But I've never seen an alien.
Right.
And I can't say what the craft my wife and I saw were.
Well, just to talk about what you just said, Jazz. I mean, David Grush didn't say anything that I didn't know, but I've never seen the aliens or the bodies of the spacecraft either. You know, it's like, I mean, right. So, I mean, it's like, okay, fine. You know, it's like,
But John's right to question everybody, because I mentioned to you when we were preparing for this interview, we got a new whistleblower recently that supposedly came forward. His name is Sands.
Right.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yes, Jason.
I don't have notes in front of me. And initially, the first things I heard about that weren't from him, admittedly, they were from some other people before he went and did his Twitter Spaces thing. You know, not only did he say he was on the program, not only had he seen craft, he had seen and conversed with telepathically a living alien being. And according to one report, which turned out to be shot down later by him, he had killed it. You know, now that's the kind of story you really can sink your teeth into.
Right.
Can you prove this? Of course he can't.
Right.
But then other people came out and started investigating this guy's background, and Micah Hanks was one of them that was looking into it. I don't know how deep John has dug into this yet, but there's been a couple reputable investigators that have come out and said, this guy's been around in the background for a while without anybody talking about him, and he was discounted by a lot of people because he's just not credible.
Yeah.
He has a DD-214. He was in the military.
Yeah.
But all this stuff about aliens and stuff, nobody knows what he's talking about.
But Jazz, I want to get back to your cynicism about, here's the deal. I'm with you, and you and I have talked many times. After doing this for like 5 years, I've heard so many absolutely ridiculous things that have actually been true. So, John, I got to ask you. So, you're talking about the fact, like, people are saying were these letters that you got via FOIA, were they actually like hoaxed and manufactured? Does that ever occur to you, or have you seen that actually happen in the past? I wouldn't put anything past the government at this point.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a totally fair one to ask. I have never seen where something to this extent was faked or hoaxed. That doesn't there's just nothing that's citable that I can show you and say, well, this has happened before, so we should definitely consider it. It's just not there. What I've asked other people to do that have made the accusation is to show me an example of something like that happening before. And no one's ever taken me up on it. My entire point is that if you make that accusation that the government is just completely making all this up and they want to make David Grush look bad, that's fine, but you need to prove it,
Right.
And that's something that, look, I wrote literally books on government secrets and lies, like what they've told us to the public and then what was really going on behind the scenes. So I'm not new to that world, but you need to prove it. And you need to be able to essentially, with evidence, make that theory sound. And it's just not. So I think what we're dealing with here is a little bit of a play on words that David Grush said, well, I didn't get any emails from Arrow. And when he said that, I mean, that was technically true where because they didn't have his
The
contact
email.
information,
Right.
which I will admit is kind of silly. It's like, well, I'm guessing they could have found it. But what you do have, and maybe there's some legal thing here that I'm not privy to. So in fairness, there may be a reason why they don't go to an intelligence agency or try and dig him up and proactively contact him, but rather getting word to him to have him go to Arrow. And again, I that could not be even a concern, but there also could be some legal thing there where they needed him to go to them and say, hey, I'm here to tell my story. So maybe there was a little bit of that in play, but you clearly see how Christopher Mellon was told Arrow really wants to talk to David Grush. You see how other people, these names were redacted, had even dinner with David Grush, so they were clearly personally involved with the guy, whether they be a friend or professional colleague. And Arrow is saying, bring him, our contact information, and we want to talk to him. All of those efforts were there. So that if it's fake or embellished or whatever on the side of the government, I would imagine that we would have heard David Grush make that claim by now. So I think that we have to solidify the effort by Arrow was real. It's not disputed by David Grush. He ended up giving a statement to News Nation after the documents that I got out were profiled by News Nation, which is a surprise in itself, to be honest with you, because News Nation was instrumental in making David Grush known to the world.
They've been pounding the UFO thing pretty hard. I mean,
well, but based on this, though, I mean, they kind of were put on the map with the UFO stories because of Ross Coulthart's interview. Now, it has to be mentioned the debrief was first. They brought David Grush out in writing, but then the first televised interview was News Nation with Ross Coulthart. And I think that they realized then that the UFO topic was something of great interest and, got them eyeballs. And so they've done a bunch of stories. So it was very surprising to me for them to profile these documents because of their history with David Grush. And these documents kind of don't make them look good. So when the original story was dropped, David Grush declined to comment. He did not.
Forgive me, John, but was it you? Was it your video or somebody else where they're speculating, or maybe it's not even speculation, that one of the reasons Grush didn't contact Arrow is because he personally doesn't trust Sean Kirkpatrick? Were you talking about that? I can't remember. Was that somebody else?
Yeah, because it's in the documents.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Okay.
So in a lot of in fairness, a lot of people have been talking.
That's
about
come
that.
up with a number of people. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. I actually found the Signal documents that John revealed to be probably even more disappointing than John did, because I told you what I thought about it up until then, but after that, there's so many things in there that clearly Grush said repeatedly that were not true. And you have to, you've given him some credit, Jim, like, well, maybe it was miscommunication or they couldn't contact, maybe, but it's just like, why would anyone lie about that? It doesn't make sense to me. And if you don't have the truth about, I understand he's the keeper, allegedly, of lots of classified stuff that he still can't talk to that wasn't cleared by Dopser, And right. Everybody who doesn't know what Dopser is, you can look that up after the show. But this is just things that happened after he was out of the program and just conversations that were going on. And you're not going to endanger national security by talking about that, So it's like, why weren't we getting a straight story? And that, it at a minimum, confuses me, and it raises doubts in my mind.
The way he handled that, I think, definitely solidified some of my concerns, because I would think that if there was any question over what the DOD released via FOIA, we would have heard about it, at least by now. But on top of that, the News Nation network gave him ample opportunity to comment. And although he eventually submitted a comment after the story came out and News Nation updated their story, nothing was addressed. He was talking about the clearance issues. So you have a couple different excuses here, which is a red flag in itself. If he didn't trust Kirkpatrick, which is clear and palpable
and understandable in some ways,
and possibly so, understandable. Sure, I'll give him that. Kirkpatrick is gone now, and even if he's a consultant, and still working for them, which I hear is a big possibility. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but
Oh, he confirmed it recently.
So he
Yes.
did. Okay, yeah, I thought I heard that somewhere.
He's an unpaid consultant,
unpaid
but he
consultant.
has been in on meetings. Yes.
Great. So that's confirmed, but he's not at the helm anymore. So is it really about Kirkpatrick or the clearance issue? And that was another thing, because the general public primarily heard the clearance issue, which
Right.
again could be a very valid concern. But what was interesting about the documents that came out was that Arrow was making a lot of effort to address those concerns. And in the documents, for those who may be listening or watching that aren't aware, the documents show that there was a meeting scheduled and David Grush didn't show up. And so, and then the excuse was essentially that, well, Arrow didn't address his concerns about the clearance issues and whether or not that they were cleared to hear everything. And the documents revealed that over time, that original time frame when they scheduled the meeting, they only had a SAPCO letter, a letter from SAPCO, which is pretty powerful in itself, but essentially stated that Arrow could hear everything. Later, a CAPCO memo came from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence that further supported the fact that Arrow could hear everything. So they I think were making ample effort, in my opinion, based on evidence. That's not me defending anybody, but based on the evidence, they were making ample effort to convince David Grush and put his mind at ease. We're cleared to hear everything. And what I didn't see in the documents that I would love to see in the public sphere is the legal argument from his legal representation, whether that's Charles McAuliffe now or someone else, because I hear the rumblings that he no longer is represented by the same former ICIG. Regardless, whomever is giving him this legal advice, I'd love to see the argument. Let's see that. And I think that the general public deserves that, not to repeat what I said moments ago, but the general public deserves that because of the amount of tension that this has received and because of the amount of desire by David Grush to be as transparent as possible. And so let's see it. Let's see the legal argument and prove it and settle this once and for all. And
I'm not normally one to jump in and defend Arrow, but I will go ahead and give a preview. I'm not ready to write about this yet, but I do have one contact that I have spoken to on several occasions specifically about this subject, who doesn't have any more, I don't have any deep secrets about what was actually going on. But in the argument over whether they were at level 10 or they were at level 50, he pointed out to me, and this is somebody who was, and I believe still is, at level 50, has said, just because a person or a group is cleared to receive information, it doesn't mean they're going to receive information if the people who hold the information have some reason not to give it to you. So it's possible that Arrow didn't hear everything that they should have heard. Is it equally possible that Sean Kirkpatrick wasn't terribly interested in studying the historical records, and that's why their historical thing was so bad? You know, we don't know. We just don't know. We were trying to read people's minds. But yeah, it's possible that even if they were cleared to get everything we wanted them to have and then release everything possible to us, which clearly didn't happen, it doesn't mean they did get it all. And Grush was, I guess, he's admitted, reluctant to talk to them. A lot of other people might have been reluctant to talk to them too. Even though they were cleared to hear it, it doesn't mean they heard it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, let's blow this up a little bit. You know, there's one of the complaints, or not complaints, or statements people have made is that one of the reasons the government is so hesitant to release more about the UAP situation is because if they did, after 70 years of covering shit up, they basically, there's a whole bunch of people in the military who've essentially broken the law, and by releasing some of this information that might come to light. And even with this thing that the Congress did in 21 about giving people immunity, there's still people hesitant to do this. Have you guys heard anything about this, or?
Not specifics for me.
Did you?
John,
you go ahead, John. If you have a story, please, by all means.
No, I was just trying to say I don't have a specific
Oh,
story about that. Yeah, we've all heard these rumors. It's certainly possible, but a lot of this, that's the problem with this discussion, whether it's in mainstream coverage, whether it's the stuff, the documents that John digs up, the stories that I write about, you know, so much of this devolves down into UFO Twitter and
Yeah.
social media and Twitter spaces, like we were just saying, and all these things going on, and things get blown up and out of proportion. And a lot of it is, I hate to use the word, I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but there are facts like John can produce with documents. We have definite statements that are on the record with the media from people in the government, in the military, former military people. You can analyze all those things. But below the surface, a lot of this just turns into gossip,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, right.
And what do you do with that? You can't run a business reporting on gossip.
Yeah. Well, I could
yes,
make an
yes, you
argument.
can.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
You can.
Come on, Jazz.
I was totally wrong.
Look, I will say this. I think a lot of people. I don't want to name names with the accusations, but I think that they do find profit in their stories. I believe that
Sure.
it behooves them to fall back on NDAs when it comes to having to prove their claims, and it makes it easier for them to fall back on their NDAs and security clearances and stuff like that. And it would make it a lot easier for them to make these types of excuses, like, well, Arrow isn't cleared. Now, I'm using that example not to put David Grush in this category, because I'll be honest, I don't know if he's in that category of just wanting to get some spotlight, get a book deal, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. I truly don't know. But why I bring that up is, to me, that's when my red flags go up more and more, and it solidifies the concerns to where now we have ample evidence that the effort was on the side of Arrow to try and show David Grush and his attorney. Now, more has come out that there was conversation between his attorney and Arrow, that essentially he could have, meaning David Grush, could have allowed the ICIG to release his testimony and everything that he gave to Arrow. That was a big revelation from Dean Johnson and
Indeed.
talking to Dr. Kirkpatrick. And if that's untrue, I still haven't seen any dispute to it. So we have to operate that at this point, it is accurate that Dr. Kirkpatrick / Arrow could have received the ICIG information if David Grush authorized it, which he did and would not. Now, that is another big red flag, because that would have released any legal being on the hook, for
Yeah.
releasing classified
It
information
would,
to
wouldn't it? Yeah.
a non-cleared entity. Yeah,
Right.
as if the ICIG allowed Arrow to get the testimony, that essentially relinquishes all responsibility from David Grush, puts it solely on the ICIG, that they were the ones that gave that information over. And yet that wasn't done. So my whole point being, it's like when push comes to shove, all of a sudden people go back off and go, oh no, I don't want that to be done. I don't want the ICIG to release my testimony.
Yeah.
I don't want to appear under oath. I don't want to give Arrow anything. I don't want to talk to them. And then the excuses flow. So that now, as the general public, as researchers, as journalists like Jazz and you, Jim, as you're trying to make sense of all of this, you look at it and go, okay, well, how much is this because they don't want to have to prove what they know they can't? And how much of it is a legitimate concern? And I don't have the answer to that, and I don't know, but I think it is and can be a profitable business for people. I think book advances and stuff
Oh, of
like
course.
that for certain people can pull
Well,
in a lot of money.
Lying can be a profitable business. I mean,
Oh,
Yeah.
it is.
All
And
protected by the
can
First
be, and
Amendment.
it has been for many people. I'm going to get
Yeah.
myself in a ton of trouble, but how many people have come out with stories that talk to people like Jeremy Corbell, talk to people like Linda Moulton Howe, things like that, and they wind up being on TV shows, some TV shows that I've seen John on,
Mhm.
and they come out and they have these things, but there's nothing to support them. Some of them sound very realistic, things about the government being up to no good. Other people saying, I was in an alien base operated with cooperation of human beings under Antarctica. That's an actual story if anybody wants to go
I
look
know
it up.
that. I know it is.
So, yeah, and did some of those people make money off that? This guy Sands that we just brought up, he already got a James Fox deal and is in his upcoming documentary,
Yeah.
unless he gets axed out now.
Right.
Is that
So
confirmed?
does that
I was.
mean? Go ahead, John.
Is Jason Sands confirmed to be in the documentary? I know
Well,
he interviewed him, but has he talked about that?
James Fox has shown pictures that certainly look like they're pointing at Sands. So I guess the answer to your question is not 100%, but some of the comments that Fox made later on Twitter, he did seem to be backpedaling
supporting
quite a bit.
his yeah.
My
Backpedaling from his
impression
original
is that
thing.
Chaz is right, that at least initially, he was signed up to be on this documentary. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
reneged or.
And the whole thing's been filmed, but if he's not going to be in it now, that means they have to go back and recut it again at this point,
Yeah.
which, with his experience, John can tell you, that's a huge pain in the butt because the film's already late.
Right. Right. Okay. So, we've been talking, Jazz, you were talking about like the fact you can build a whole thing on gossip. Let's actually talk about what we actually know is true. I'm going to get down to the base level. First of all, we know the UAPs are real flying machines, right? The government's basically said that, correct? Right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Do we actually know, either one of you, from any government documents or anything, whether we actually have crashed alien spacecraft?
Nope.
Have you ever seen any thing that we even come close to definitive evidence that would say that?
If John has, I haven't.
Yeah, John,
When it comes, well, it's all how you ask the question. Alien aircraft or spacecraft? No. Unknown aircraft /
Yes.
spacecraft? Yes. So, and those are the types of documents that don't get a whole lot of publicity, to be honest with you. I mean, there was a whole operation called Project Moondust for many years.
Yeah.
That although absolutely was kind of aimed towards capturing Soviet technology that fell from space, so on and so forth. There was material that was received through Moondust that they couldn't really attribute to any country whatsoever. That doesn't mean that it's alien, but my whole point here is that when you research Project Moondust and the physical retrieval of debris, that's the whole aim of this project. What's interesting is this day and age, you'd think the Cold War's over, you'd be able to get a lot of the documents. Quite on the opposite is true, where a lot of the Moondust stuff is gone. What's that?
The Russian documents from the Russian end, you mean, or just here?
No, these were all American documents. Project Moondust was absolutely an American operation and program. But the documentation, which would include fallen Soviet technology, because obviously we were watching what the Soviets were doing at the time, the program is very hard to get anything on. And a lot of the documents are just gone. They're seemingly missing. I found some that were undiscovered at the Department of State that came out many years ago that I got. There's some random ones at the Defense Intelligence Agency that have come out. And again, all fallen debris. Sometimes they can attribute it to the Soviet Union, again, at that time. Other ones they just didn't know, and there were no explanation for them. Photographs of mysterious spheres that they were able to get. One that was said to burn for days. Was that some type of fuel tank that was on fire and just burned for days, or was that something else? We don't really know. But again, those documents are very hard to find. There's other material too that again doesn't prove alien, but rather a piece of material connected to a UFO case that was hand delivered to a CIA scientist's office in the 1970s. So this was years after the Project Blue Book era. Again, bottom line, proving that even after the government said, hey, we're not interested in UFOs anymore, the documentation through FOIA has proven that there was physical objects, at least one case that I can cite you right now, that they hand-delivered material to a CIA scientist's office, that they talked about how the CIA was still interested, though unofficially, in the UFO phenomena, whatever it was, and what they were investigating, and they were keeping tabs on it, and they knew that it was a worldwide a worldwide problem, and that's why the CIA was interested.
So
But they had physical material
yeah,
as well.
that would be the next question, and that is, do we know of any physical material that's checked out via a scientific spectrograph or whatever of not of Earth origin? Does any of this? But I remember seeing this TV show. I can't remember which one it was. I just can't remember, about some guy who, which I think is kind of funny, who on the lake shore in Michigan, Lake Michigan, who shot at a UFO, and he said a piece fell off, and do you guys know what I'm talking about? And I can't remember what television show it was, but they said they had the thing analyzed. It came back as nothing, no material available on Earth.
I'm not familiar with those, but the problem is, Avi Loeb is a great resource for this subject because he has found one of the most convincing examples of something that looks like it's probably not terrestrial,
Yeah,
but it's not completely unknown. It's just he's found these little nodules
yeah,
that
right.
have very unusual chemical they're all elements that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The universe is made up, as far as we
Right,
know, pretty much the same set of elements
right.
everywhere. Everything
But
you find is going to have those elements in it.
isotopes
You
are
know,
kind of weird, though. You know.
but the stuff that he found, it was odd enough that you could say, if this is some form of steel, it should have had these particular isotopes in it. And the only way it wouldn't is if the steel had been manufactured more than
Yeah.
1,000,000 years ago.
Right.
Again, not definitive, but no, I don't think that proves anything. There were recoveries. Excuse me. Project Blue Book has a really weird case, and this goes back. When did Sputnik go up? Was that the late 50s or early
Yeah,
60s?
57 was it? I'm just
Something like that.
pulling that
Yeah,
out of the book.
there was a family from Texas that was driving on a vacation in Louisiana, and they contacted the government because they said they saw Sputnik falling, and it had come down, and they thought the government would want to know because they might want to go recover it because it's
Yeah,
from
Sputnik.
adversaries. And then that was the last they heard about it. The government went and recovered something, but the date and time when it came down, which was identified in the documents, which we got through FOIA, again, thanks, that was the wrong date. We know when and where Sputnik came down. That wasn't it. They
Yeah.
went and recovered something, and they said, "Oh, we'll get back to you," and it disappeared.
Well,
So are they
that's
sitting on that somewhere still?
that kind of gets back to the whole Kecksburg thing. People thought Kecksburg was a Russian Cosmos satellite that crashed, but it turns out it crashed 12 hours before that or something like that.
Yeah,
You know?
same thing.
Yeah, same thing. I know. I talked to
Yeah,
Stan
but that
Gordon.
Sputnik one I found I got a, if anybody wants to go dig, I put an article about that up at the debrief probably more than a year ago. But
I'll dig it
that was
up.
a fascinating case.
I'm going to make a blog post on our blog about all these links. So yeah, I'll put that up. Yeah.
Oh, when you're making links, by the way, because John mentioned it earlier, you really should add a link to Dean Johnson's website because he doesn't get enough credit, and Dean Johnson is an incredible resource,
All right.
an impeccable researcher, a great journalist who doesn't get the credit he's due, in my opinion.
All
and
right.
if you follow him closely, you'll get he's up on stuff immediately as soon as it comes out.
All right. So let me move on here. Do we have any government documents that actually reference aliens? I can only think of one, and that's that one on the FBI site that everybody looks at, which I think is actually funny because it's like the FBI says, "Oh, this was a big mistake." Yeah, like special agents from the FBI are going to mistake policemen for aliens. It's like that. That's the reason I'm laughing. But but John, do you know of any documents that talk about aliens?
Yeah, you're talking about the guy
John has a bunch of them. Not saying there are aliens,
when you're
but
looking for that,
mentioning them.
When you look for that smoking gun, I mean, you're not going to get a government document that says alien. No. The one that you're talking about, though, is the Guy Hoddle memo.
Yeah, right.
Which, a fun fact, I just got fully unredacted about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So if you haven't seen it, they unredacted some of the names, and you can, look into the actual law enforcement that was listed on there. But long story short, I mean, you're not going to find that smoking gun. What you have to do with the government documents is just start using common sense, in my opinion. I can tell you one quick, if you don't mind me kind of going half back to your last question, but this one as well. The case that you mentioned off the lake, I'm not really familiar with that one. But I will say that there was a similar case out of Las Vegas, and it's infamously known now as the Bob White encounter.
Oh, yeah.
And Bob White,
I know about this. Please go ahead.
It's I'll nutshell it because there's a lot of different facets to the story. But essentially, Bob White was driving with another friend of his out of Las Vegas, and they had seen a UFO. He gets shooken awake by the driver. We don't know who that is, but Bob was the one that to tell the story. Shaken awake, and he sees this really bright light / object, and he just wanted to sleep, and he goes back to bed. And the woman who was driving shook him again awake. This time the object was much, much closer. They essentially get out of the car. They look up and kind of goes off into the sky, reconnects with a much larger UFO. As it shoots off, a piece goes down into the desert. We recreated this. I was producing for History Channel at the time, and I had known Bob because he had contacted me, and this ties into government documents, so bear with me. But during the event, he goes out and he gets that piece that falls off. And he had it in the trunk of his car, and then later
really quick, John, how did the piece fall off?
No one knows. I mean, it's when the main object shot off, and he says it shot off into the sky. When it shot off, it had kind of how he described ejected from the UFO, but no one shot at it, that he's aware of. There was really kind of no rhyme or reason, but this thing falls down. Now he finds it, and it was glowing red. And in fact, I have it here in my office on the, not the actual piece, but we did a replica of it. And essentially it was glowing red. And when he touched it, he thought it was going to be hot, and it was not. He was able to touch it, even when it was like a molten red glowing. So anyway, he keeps it for decades and ends up telling the story to somebody else. They said, "Do you still have the piece?" He says, "Yes." He pulls it down. They go, "Wow, this is really fascinating." Well, fast forward to where I come in. These guys are researching this because now, after decades of having it, they're kind of intrigued by it again. He's a little bit older than when he first found it, so wanted to figure this thing out, because at the time he didn't care, but now he really wanted to. And he comes across government documents that I got from the United States Army about an incident in the 1940s that was connected to what they labeled as a flying saucer in Denmark. And the documents that I got was a photocopy of the folder, and then inside there was nothing about the case itself, but there were only really poorly done photocopies of photographs of a piece of whatever this flying saucer was from Denmark in like the 1940s. The piece looked nearly identical. It wasn't identical, but like nearly identical to the piece that Bob found out in the desert. So they contacted me and they said, "Wait a minute, where did you get these?" So we started talking, and we were friends ever since. He sadly has passed away, but I ended up retelling his story. Now there's been different scientific results done on Bob's piece, and they found the fact that the aluminum alloy, it was primarily aluminum, alloy, a mixture of different elements and so on, didn't match any known aluminum alloy that we make or manufacture here on planet Earth. Right. Now, again, doesn't mean that it's automatically alien, but it was an alloy that just didn't match anything. And then they did other tests as well that showed irregular strontium numbers, which reflected that of a Martian meteorite, so something that came in from Mars. But this thing was not a meteorite. It was not something that again, you could tell what a meteorite is. This wasn't it, but it matched the strontium levels of something that came from Mars. Go figure. So we had done a couple stories of him on History Channel, recreated the whole event for one show called UFO Hunters. That actually later spawned off the actual series with Bill Burns and Pat.
That still reruns today. I just saw
I've seen everyone.
It's a great show.
Been on. I was I went on to be a producer on season 3. I didn't work on 1 and 2. But I had created the documentary by the same name that was on the History Channel, did really well for them, that told Bob's story. And then we later brought him back for UFO, I think that was UFO Hunters itself. And then we told his story again, did some more analysis and so on. So sorry to be a little long-winded there,
That's okay.
but that tied into what Bob believed was, I think that he was kind of like on the record saying that he felt it was alien, that it had tied into aliens, but it was something that when Bob had this experience and started talking about his story, the documents were not in the public sphere. Meaning it's not like he saw this and went,
Right.
maybe I can get something and
Yeah.
replicate this. And then years from now, make the connection.
Right.
You know, that didn't make sense.
Well, I got to
So-
ask you though. I have to ask you.
Mhm.
Really parsing words here. Okay, so you said, and this is very true, that aluminum alloy, because it couldn't be traced to manufacture on Earth, doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial. But does that mean it's non-terrestrial? Could we say that?
No, there was no scientists going back to when we were researching this that would go in and say, no, this was definitely manufactured, you know, on another planet or anything like that, that it was not made here on Earth. There was really nothing that you could say on that, but we still couldn't match it to anything. And then finding the various numbers, again, the strontium was the one that kind of stuck out to me. That's what kind of...
Yeah, we did. We lost everybody again. Sorry about that, guys. It's the
No,
internet.
that was
worries.
a quick one.
Somebody doesn't want us talking.
Of course they don't. No, that's right. Hey,
It's
let's
the
actually,
government. I knew it.
yeah, let's address that. So there's something you said earlier when we were talking about, well, actually, we were talking about Jason Sands, you know, about the fact, so he changed his story. Now, any one of you, Jazz, you know about this really quickly, tell about what happened here. This guy said that I think if I'm right, he said he was one of the guys who actually saw or touched the extraterrestrial
Right.
crash spacecraft, right? And then he very quickly decided, well, no, I didn't, right? Do I got that right?
No, well, if he did, I missed it, and I've been trying to follow it. He denied the story that was being told, saying that he had told a story, and here we're getting into the gossip thing,
Right.
that
yeah.
he had told a story about he encountered, while on a mission, while on assignment, a blue-skinned extraterrestrial who he had telepathic conversation with, and then killed it at the behest of his of the people in charge. He said that part wasn't true. I have not heard him walk back the fact that he was working on the program.
Okay. Did he ever say why he killed the alien? Is that
No, he's denied that he said that.
Oh, okay.
We only have that secondhand.
Oh, all right. Okay. Because I'm just thinking, you know, Philip Schneider went down that hole and he said he killed the alien just because he got so far.
Well, we all know the Philip Schneider story is true.
So that's what that was what I thought about when I started hearing these stories
Yeah.
with Schneider.
Yeah. All right. So the reason I brought this up is because now I guess I'm asking you guys to speculate, but the reason I'm asking to speculate is because you guys know way more about any of this shit than most other people, and so your speculation to me holds more weight. Does the government threaten people's lives or actually kill people? You know, it's like did Sands get a visit from the modern day Men in Black and said, you know, you don't really want to talk about this because you know we could like hurt your what? Does this shit happen?
Well, I don't know about with UFOs, but that, to put it in your phrasing, that shit definitely happens. It's happened many, many times over the years. There's just too many stories for it not to be true. If you talk about things they don't like you talking about, they get upset and bad things happen. Just go look at John will know instantly, and why I don't know why I'm suddenly drawing a blank. There was one very famous disinformation agent, Doty,
Yeah.
who wound up, he didn't actually kill him, but it led to the death of somebody who thought they were in contact with aliens.
Paul Benowitz, yeah.
right?
Benowitz, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's, and okay, at this point, just my opinion, that's a relatively minor example. A lot worse stuff has happened. The government has done so much stuff that they have lied about, nothing to do with UFOs or aliens.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I use this example all the time. How long was the Tuskegee syphilis experiment going on?
Right.
And nobody knew about it. It was
Yeah.
kept entirely secret, and they killed off tons of people when they told them they were treating them.
Not only that, forgive me, but if you brought that up in the 1950s and said the government was doing this, people would say, "Oh no, they aren't." No one
Oh,
would believe
they
you.
would have called you crazy. It was
Yeah, that's right.
absolutely true. The
That's right.
government absolutely took members of the military and gave them hallucinogenic drugs without telling them to perform tests on them. They do all sorts of crap and then they deny it later. So we're suddenly going to say, but when it comes to UFOs, they're pure as driven snow. I'm sorry.
Right, I
No.
know. Well, I share your cynicism, Jazz. I don't know, John, if what you feel about this, but it's like if you're not cynical, I admire you.
Well, look, your question was, do they threaten? I mean, I think right now muddying the waters is suiting them better than threatening people and so on. And
Yeah.
they, meaning the government. I do
Yeah.
believe that there is an effort to discredit the topic. I think that this was Condon 2.0. I spoke about this years ago when Congress was starting to get involved and how we were essentially seeing the mid to late 1960s repeat itself almost identically. It was crazy with former military, I used to work on a UFO program, and I think that this is worthwhile. I mean, when you juxtapose the mid to late 1960s with Gerald Ford and J. Allen Hynek and all those key players that led to the scientific study, what does that sound like? Which led to them saying, no, there's nothing here. You look at what's going on today, it's nearly identical from the former military, I worked on a UFO program, the former government connected / politicians, the politicians themselves advocating for congressional language to have more transparency and hearings. You remember, was it 66, I think it was, when the UFO hearing took place. You look at it and it's like, damn, that's like the same exact thing that's going on now. And look where we're at. So I think what really is going on is, it's the muddying of the waters. It's calming the interest for the majority of the general public because they get their news from the 2-minute, if that, story on their nightly news that essentially says, well, there's nothing to the topic now. We went through a stage where it was quite the opposite. They were talking about the Tic Tac. They were interviewing Fravor and people like him. And you had that kind of short-lived era. But now you're kind of seeing a turn in a lot of the media outlets. Not all, but I think a lot of them. And so I think that is the most beneficial to them. Muddy the waters to the point where a lot of people give up. They don't care anymore. They don't have the ability to say, show me them aliens.
Right.
And when they don't get shown them, they go, well, forget it. What's on
If
TV?
we had Micah Hanks on today, I can assure you he would have brought this up in recent months multiple times. He has started referring to Arrow as the new Blue Book.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not saying it's entirely discredited, not saying there's no value, but he's saying the attitude that's being exhibited is more towards nothing to see here and kind of doing shoddy work with the historical research. And so part of it might be they didn't have access to the information like we talked about in the beginning of the program. But part of it might have been maybe they really weren't all that interested in finding things.
Guys, when Blumenthal and Keene wrote that article in December 17 in the New York Times, do you think the government, or let's say the military, I won't say the government, was pissed off that got out, or do you think that was a coordinated effort? I mean,
it's definitely coordinated.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing, Jazz. You and I have talked about this a lot, about there seems to be, from what we understand, this real struggle in the Pentagon between disclosure and not disclosing. There's people on both sides of this argument, and it seems like John, what you were talking about, this is kind of like going back and forth almost. First, we have this congressional hearing in 21. Well, not much got disclosed, but still, the fact they even had one was amazing. And then, like a year later, they put out another report, and it's like the report's basically nothing to see here, And so I'm just wondering if there's just like this tug of war between these two different factions. Is there anything to this at all?
Definitely.
I would say there's absolutely something to the UFO topic. I just I would differ then probably from you gentlemen on the coordinated effort for the December 2017 rollout of the information. I think it happened in a little bit of a different way.
Oh, please elaborate.
Well, again, I'm going to be outnumbered here, but
No, that's all right.
I don't think it was coordinated by the U.S. government. I think, and I'll get myself in trouble for saying this. I believe that the December 2017 New York Times aspect of this was more activism versus journalism. And the reason I say that
on the part of the journalists, you mean?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that came out. I appeared on a show for Showtime. It was produced by J.J. Abrams, and it was called UFO. And in that interview, I believe it was Leslie Kane in that show who said that they essentially just kind of left out some of the other stuff because she was essentially shaping the narrative. I'm paraphrasing that part. But when you listen to her say it, she was obviously shaping the story because she didn't want to get into some of the more OSAP paranormal research at Skinwalker Ranch. The same with David Grush. This to me solidified why I say that. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but rather it just kind of puts it into perspective. Fast forward to when Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal played a role in rolling David Grush out to the general public. It's very interesting when you watch the interviews that she did after when Biologics came up, which came out in News Nation, but not in the debrief.
Right.
She didn't even want to talk about it. She's like, no, I don't know anything about that.
Oh, hold, John, I got to stop you because the last two times Jazz has been on the show here, we have talked about the fact that Grush never actually talks about extraterrestrials. He always talks about non-human entities or biologics, like you said. And so, and we have both speculated. I'm putting words in your mouth, Jazz, but I think you'll probably, I think I get this accurate, that he is making a very specific, he's saying that for a very specific reason. Because maybe,
I agree with that, but I first want to wind back just a couple of seconds there. I think I misunderstood the question. I was not implying that the December 17th article was orchestrated by the government. I think they would have much preferred that it never came out. But people knew it was coming. Harry Reid had been running his mouth for more than a decade. People were talking about it. It just wasn't being reported. And the government knew this was going to happen eventually. And I think they did insert some of their own people into the conversation and tried to get their own spin, people that would support their side, of the discussion into it. No, I don't think the government planned that. I think they wish it had never happened. But once they knew it was going to happen, I believe there were definitely people, particularly in the Pentagon and the intelligence community, who wanted to get a lid on this and at least control the spin, and make sure there were voices in there at a minimum casting doubt.
Yeah.
And so they could have a plausible reason to say, well, yeah, these are weird and we have been looking into it. Sorry, we lied. We said we stopped in 1969. We've been doing it the whole time,
right.
Which they have. But, but it's like, yeah, these are weird things and we don't know. But might be the Russians and the Chinese, might be airborne trash. Who knows? And they never come out and say there's no aliens. They come out and say we don't have any evidence of extraterrestrial life.
Right.
And so if they haven't locked that down yet, it's like, what the heck have we got here? And they can't figure it out. That doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial, like you were just saying, Jim.
Yeah.
So maybe they're trying to walk as close to the truth as they can, but I'm pretty sure it's not all Russians.
I'm assuming you guys both saw this a couple of years ago. Christopher Mellon wrote an article, and did he write it on the Debrief or maybe the Wall Street Journal, where he said
writes for us quite a bit. Yeah,
everybody in Washington is scared to say the A word, and the A word is aliens. That's what he said. I don't know, because forgive me. I was talking to Robert Powell, a scientist, just last night on the show here. And so, he's right. He writes about UFOs, and he does it from a very strict fact-based point of view. His point of view is that they definitely exist, but we don't know what they are. And I said to him, well, okay, so the government says they're real, and he buys that. And we didn't make them because we don't have the technology. We don't think the Chinese or the Russians made them because they don't know shit. And then the only other alternative is that they're not from Earth. Am I? That's the logical jump for me. Am I out of phase here? What's going on?
Well, that's a logical jump for a lot of people, but not everyone. Extraterrestrials, okay, maybe ultra terrestrials. You can go look up the definition of that. time travelers. That's
Right.
another theory that comes
Right.
up.
Yeah.
It could be us coming back from the future to see why we
Right.
screwed up the planet so
Yeah.
badly.
And I have to say,
This
Paul
would be
and
a
I
reasonable
talked
time
about
to look.
that. He doesn't buy the time travel thing because he can't wrap his mind around the science. But I think at this point, if you're 10,000 years ahead of us, it's all magic. So
Breakaway civilizations.
yeah,
You know, some of the reports that you get, and I'm sure John has seen them too. The aliens look remarkably human,
yeah,
but they're not us,
right.
And so who knows? Maybe Lemuria is real. Maybe they live under a mountain in Seattle or something. I have no idea. I personally, I'm kind of a fan of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but we don't know. We need somebody to show us that. Do they have any DNA? Are they robots?
Yeah.
Answer
Don't
those
get me started
questions.
on the robot thing. I'll bore you guys for hours.
No.
No,
I love
we
it.
we got to let John go. We've already
No.
run over the
Okay.
limit, and I
All
got
right.
some more stuff
Okay.
I got to do too.
All right.
So
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
The
true.
really quick on that, I did a show, two of them actually, one for history, one for discovery, and it changed my whole concept of extraterrestrial life and what will essentially meet in the cosmos when it's confirmed. Whether or not they've been here now, it's a different question, but how artificial intelligence plays a role in the development of any intelligent society, and to talk to some of the brightest minds that are much, much smarter than myself doing these shows, and to hear what scientists talk about behind the scenes and how AI/intelligent machines can connect to essentially an extraterrestrial civilization. It was absolutely mind-blowing.
Well,
I
you
just
set the
absolutely
stage
love that
for your
topic.
next appearance, John. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you. I'm
fun.
looking forward to having both you guys back. And Jazz is right. We've already gone over time, so I'm going to let you go.
No worries.
Thank you, John Greenwald. Thank you very much. Jazz, I love you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
always a pleasure.
I will
Thank
see
you.
both you guys. Thanks very much. You take care, all right?
I appreciate it. You too.
Take care.
Sorry, I had the mic turned off. You don't see those two minds in one room every day, do you? John Greenwald from the Black Vault and Jazz Shaw from HotAir.com. So there was something that one of them said toward the end. It was I think John said this about the fact that in some ways it's like the 1960s all over again. And I was going to mention this when we actually had the discussion, and it flew by. But it's not just aliens that are like that. Like everything, we were talking in the A block about the fact these student protests. I mean, on the surface, it's just like 1960s. Like I said, they really aren't, but it's kind of like it's certainly similar. And we're kind of going through the same thing all over again. I mean, Biden reminds a lot of people, the Biden administration, of the Carter administration from the 1970s. I mean, I don't have to tell you this; they're very similar. Although I do have to tell you that I think Jimmy Carter was a political genius compared to Joe Biden. I mean, I really do. But the similarities are not lost on just a few. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. It's really interesting. I want to have John Greenwald back to talk about the robot thing. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that guy's done so much, and now it sounds like I'm kind of degrading Jazz. I'm not. Jazz writes. He's not just a UFO guy for all of Salem Media. He writes several pieces every day for HotAir.com and on politics. And I've always said he's my brother from another mother because he's the only person who has the same gig on the internet that I do. So, but yeah, it was really great to have both those guys on. It's unfortunate that Micah Hanks from the debrief couldn't join us. Maybe next time, huh? So, folks, we're going to leave it at that for tonight, and also for Thursday. We don't do Friday shows here at all. So we'll be back next week. Now, this is terrible because this is our 117th show, and I've never actually had to say this before. I don't know if we're coming back on Monday or Tuesday of next week. I do not know. So I'll try to post something on the blog this weekend at jimandnight.com. So to tell you, But yeah, we will be back either Monday or Tuesday with Tim Conaway, former presidential candidate, former editor of Hustler magazine, and somebody told a really funny joke. Was it Greg Gutfeld about Hustler? And I thought, yeah, that's my man there. He was talking about the Hustler of 30, 40 years ago, like whatever happened to that? Well, okay, I'll tell you what happened to Hustler. Hustler is an online magazine now. So they don't make a printed version, but it still comes out. So yeah, so now Tim's claim to fame is he was the executive editor of Hustler magazine during the 80s and 90s for about 15 years at the height of its popularity. And we like to give him crap because do you remember the beaver hunt? The beaver hunt? Well, Tim picked out the winning pictures. That's what he did. God bless him. And also, he was running for president for a while, but dropped out. So there's that too. That would be this cycle. Just recently, he dropped out a few weeks ago. So he's coming on early next week. Wednesday, we have the dynamic duo Jennifer Oliver O'Connell and Jeff Meyer. They are coming on, and we should have a guest for Thursday, but I don't want to announce anybody. I haven't confirmed that. So, but like I said, we're taking either Monday or Tuesday off, one or the other. I just want to reiterate what I said at the top of the show. So the following 2 weeks after that, we're going to take off either Tuesday or Wednesday. And either week, I still don't know yet. We're going to do 2 weeks of 3-day shows. And then on June 3rd, the week of June 3rd, that's the week after Memorial Day. We're taking the whole week off because I'm having surgery. So that's what's going on. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked the discussion with Shaw and Greenwald. I just thought it was great, just tickling me pink. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a nice weekend. I'll be hyped up on Tylenol the entire time. Good night, Uncle Donnie. Good night, Esperanza. And good night to you, wherever you are. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you Monday or Tuesday. Some whatever. I don't know.